I'm Trish Downing, a 2016 Paralympian and founder and director of Camp Discovery, a fitness and sports retreat for female wheelchair users. Today, I'm joined by Sara Schaffer, physical therapist, and we're going to talk a little bit about inclusive fitness. This is the first video in a series of videos to talk about how you can become fit or you can work on strength and toning from a seated position, whether you're in a wheelchair and possibly have a disability, or maybe you're in your office chair and you're being a little bit more sedentary than you might like to be. So welcome, Sara. Thank you for being part of this inclusive fitness video. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you, Trish. I'm very excited to be here. As a physical therapist of the last 25 years, it's been wonderful to be able to take some time to share some insights that I've seen over the years of some of the complications of sitting for long periods of time, whether in a wheelchair or even just sitting in an office chair. And so today is part one of many series of exercise activities that we're going to be teaching and collaborating on and sharing as a way for someone who's unsure of maybe where to even start, of how to begin that process. And so I'm really delighted to be here. Having worked in orthopedics and sports medicine, on the Olympic teams I've worked with, and then also in neurology, I'm able to combine those experiences to create something really fun for today.
So I like how you brought up where to start, because that's usually the question that people have, especially when they're in a wheelchair and they think, well, there are a lot of exercises and activities that aren't open to me, but that's really not true. So where would you start in terms of getting the correct equipment so that you can have sort of a low maintenance physical program that you can do at home, in the office, or even at a gym, if that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, exactly. And it can be quite simplified. And I'll show you a few things that I have here today. And we're going to talk about where you can find some of these things as resources. So for one, just a simple yoga block, that's something that can be found on Amazon. Also, which we're going to demonstrate here in just a minute, something called yogi toes, something called yoga hands. We have straps. We have just a simple hand towel that someone might use to just dry their hands off. We have a neck pillow that you might use on an airplane. We have a dowel that you can find at any hardware store for about $3 with a little rubber tip on the end. And then we also have what are called TheraBands, and TheraBands, they can come in loops, they can come in long straps, they can come with attachments, and so we'll be demonstrating those today. One thing though to consider about the TheraBands, a lot of times they have latex in them, so on the market you can actually Google on any source latex-free TheraBands as well. So some people do have latex allergies, and so that's something to consider when you're selecting your products.
And so I think with all of these products here, we did a pretty good job of getting them. I think we went to Dick's Sporting Goods for a resistance tube kit. Like Sara said, the dowel can just come from like a Home Depot. Gaiam has various yoga products that you can use. That's online. Amazon. On your next trip at the airport, you can get an airport pillow. So, it's really things that are very accessible to you, and we will put a list of sources and websites at the end of this video so you know some of the places that you can go to get some of this equipment. So Sara, let's start at the beginning. What are some of the first exercises you might do to get stretched out, to get ready for your exercise program, and what are some of the pieces of equipment that you might want to look at?
So one of my favorites is the yoga toes, which I'm going to ask you to go ahead and apply to your foot there.
And so I have one actually on my foot already, but I'll put the second set of yoga toes on, and don't look at my feet.
So what this is doing is this is creating a separation or a spread between the toes, and it spreads the intrinsics of the feet. Probably the most utilized area of the body is our feet. It's probably the most neglected. And so this low load, long duration stretch of the yoga toes creates a beautiful stretch of the foot. And when the foot is in a good alignment, you can actually sit in a better alignment in your chair. So that being said, people who use their hands a lot, therapists for one, people who use manual chairs, people who operate equipment, say construction workers, and really
or even
anyone.
just typing.
Typing, absolutely. People who have carpal tunnel type syndrome, problems like that, they can use something called yoga hands. And so in this demonstration, you can actually place the spread system between the fingers, and that creates a really nice stretch. And generally these I recommend usually between 10 and 15 minutes for starters. I wouldn't recommend walking in them, and I wouldn't recommend sleeping in them, but already you're getting a really nice spread in your toes. So let's leave those on. So a really nice warm up is to use a hand towel, and you can place that around your neck. And this is really good for stiff necks, for people who use their arms a lot. And the towel provides a very nice support to the cervical spine. So you can kind of pull down with your hands if that's available to you, and then begin extending back. And the towel creates just a really nice support to the neck, so you're not gonna overextend in your neck.
And it's a really nice stretch.
Is it? Very good. And you should kind of feel it on the front side of your neck. And then use your breath. Exhale coming out, inhale as you go up. And then exhale. And these are really considered your accessory breathing muscles anyway, which we often will use to help us. So they do become tight because they get overworked. Now you can also pull down on the towel and then do a side bend stretch. And you'll feel that on the opposite side that you're bending to. So it's a muscular stretch, it's a fascia stretch. You've got a big group of fascial tissue there called your Simpson's fascia, and so that often will get very restricted and tight on your muscles. So you can just keep the pressure in a downward pressure with your hands, and that actually will help stretch that.
And you can also pull with your opposite arm.
Correct.
To the direction that you're leaning. So if you're leaning to the right, you can pull with your left arm.
Correct.
And that will give you a little bit better stretch. And this is something that is great for me as a wheelchair user, but also I could see doing this after, you know, sitting at your desk and typing on a computer for a couple of hours.
Correct.
You know, this is something you can keep in a desk drawer, grab it and do some neck stretches.
Definitely. And then another one that gets kind of a different area is you can kind of look to your left and then down toward your left armpit, and you'll feel a set of muscles on the back right side called your scalenes. And your levator muscles, and that creates a nice stretch. And you can kind of play with it and find what I call your sticky spots, your areas where, oh yeah, that's getting that tissue. Same thing, she's looking to the right, so I would have her increase her pressure on her left hand. And then, you know, for some folks that have issues with their hands, that's not available to them. So another way you can do that is to use just an average neck pillow that you would find in an airport. And you can just create a little Velcro strap. I'm gonna have Tricia hold that for this purpose, but you can create the same thing. You can go side to side, and of course the pillow is supporting you, still creating the stretching. Come back to the middle, you can go back, looking up, and again, breath, exhaling out, and then looking down towards your armpits. So that's another nice option. That can also be done in a lying down position on your back. So you've got that nice support. You could also take the towel and actually put that behind your neck, and laying on your back, you could create the same type of stretch. So.
And on your next long flight, you can not only sleep with your pillow, but actually do some exercise.
Exactly. And then the other thing I like about the yoga block is that you can kind of slip it between your knees. And what this does is allows for the alignment from the femur bone to the hip to be in a very neutral position. So I'm going to let you slip that around your thighs.
And this is especially, I think, important for somebody who's a wheelchair user, correct? I mean, a lot of times when you're sitting in your wheelchair and the way that the cushion might be padded, or just the way that your legs naturally fall, you're actually falling out of that alignment. Your legs are coming together. Which seems like a good idea when you want to sit ladylike in your wheelchair, but it actually, the being out of that alignment can cause some problems with your hips or different things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And all this is doing is just kind of bringing you to a neutral position. And when you're in a neutral position in your pelvis and your heels are grounded, your pelvis is grounded, you can actually lift your sternum. And when the sternum is lifted, we get more excursion of our diaphragm, we get a better postural alignment, and just overall better body awareness.
So again, this would be something that you could sit with your legs like this while you're watching TV or something.
Correct.
So maybe 15, 30 minutes of giving your body that opportunity to get lined up and be in a better alignment position.
And then one thing you just want to be aware of too is the width of the block. So you wouldn't want to turn it horizontally. You'd be too far spread in your legs. So just things like that, just to get you a nice 90 degrees neutral alignment.
And now, are these a typical width? Like if you ordered a yoga block, this would be a typical width block. Okay.
Yes.
So if you're just looking for yoga blocks online, this would be what you'd end up with.
So far we've got a yoga strap, a yoga block, yoga toes. You're seeing a common theme here. It's often called yoga devices. However, they're just kind of basic tools that you can use as props. Okay, so let's move on. So the next stretch that I like that moves into the shoulder joints, it's also used from yoga. It's called eagle pose. So it can be done in a couple of different ways. It can be very challenging to your balance. So she's bringing her left arm over her right and clasping her hands. A very nice stretch to the capsule of the shoulder to loosen things up. So you're really strengthening, you're balancing, and you're stretching all at the same time.
But for some people, like for myself, for instance, I'm a T4 paraplegic, which means I'm paralyzed from the chest down. And so I don't have the core muscles that can help with that balancing. So you say there are some other options for being able to do a pose that's similar and get the same kind of stretch.
So a way to modify that would be to reach your hands toward your shoulders, correct? And so you lessen the lever and it's not quite as much pull. Does that feel different to you?
Yeah. It still feels like I'm getting a stretch.
Does it? Very good.
But it's easier to balance this way.
Good. And then another modification would be the I Dream of Jeannie pose. And so what's happening in this, let's start with what pose feels most comfortable to you and most of a stretch. Good. And let's work on breath work. So you're going to breathe in as you raise your elbows toward the ceiling, and then you're going to blow out, fully exhale as you bring your elbows down. So you're going to inhale, elbows going up, exhale, elbows coming down. And it's really important to get that full breath in and that full breath out, because very commonly we all have that stale carbon dioxide that limits our oxygen carrying capacity. And so we really want to get that full, even kind of making a funny noise, kind of getting that air out. Very yoga-like, but very effective.
And then sometimes when you're teaching this, you also have us focus on breathing through just one nostril. And so talk a little bit about that.
So that's a really great technique. So let's give you an example. So you can breathe in through your right nostril as you elevate, and it's bringing your mind awareness to the right side of your body, the right side of your lung, fully exhale. And also we breathe different from one nostril to the other. Sometimes we might be a little stuffy on one side, or we might have less airflow on that one side. Now we've got the left nostril carving deeply and then fully exhaling out.
So that really involves a lot of visualization along with what you're doing to actually feel that you're concentrating on one side or another of your breathing.
And you bring up a really good point with that, because this concept is called neuroplasticity. And we're now having a much better understanding that your brain and the awareness that you bring to your brain and how you bring that to other parts of your body can actually improve. And so it is a way of improving your breath, is to actually have a focus on the right to left discrimination.
And that can be something that's very important for somebody with a disability, because you are able to imagine the feeling in parts of your body that you might not be able to use or that you might not be able to feel. So it gives you a more full body awareness, I think, when you're in a position where you don't have that, those abilities at your disposal. So
completely. So moving into another type of exercise that I think would be where I would head next into the shoulder. This is more moving into more of a strengthening style. And so I'm going to give you a strap. and ask you to place that around your forearms. Perfect. Now on this one, again, anytime you don't have the muscles that are supporting you, just by something simple as straightening your arm can actually throw your balance off.
Yes, this is much more difficult to balance than if I bring my arms in a little bit.
Correct. So in this case, the modification would be just to slightly bend the elbows. So Tricia, I'm going to ask you to press out into the strap, and I'm going to ask you to keep your palms facing each other. And then I want you to use your muscles, and I want you to focus on bringing your bicep outward, and your tricep inward. And this looks quite simple, but is actually quite difficult because we're having her focus on the scapular muscles and the muscles that control the humerus, the upper forearm, as she's holding her balance as well.
So this is helping to open up my back?
Correct.
Okay.
It's opening your chest, it's strengthening in your back, and it's strengthening in the rotator cuff muscles. So in my years of working, go ahead and bring it down and just relax. In my years of working in therapy, the most common thing that I see is that people are tight in the front side of their chest, their pectorals and their bicep, and tend to be weaker on the muscles on the back side. So this really effectively does both. We're grounding you through your feet, we're grounding you through your knees, through your pelvis, we're elevating your sternum. So when you press out, you automatically lift your sternum, and then you're engaging in your scapular muscles. So there's a lot going on here.
And this can be important for anybody, especially wheelchair users, when you're continually pushing forward all day, your muscles are sort of bunching up here,
Definitely.
in the front. But also, again, somebody sitting at a desk, working at a typewriter, I'm old, working at a keyboard, that would be something that could help you open up, in the middle of your workday also.
Right.
So this fitness concept really is inclusive to help people no matter what abilities you have.
Strap, I was going to show one other modification if this is available to you. So there's either the arm straight, or you can begin to actually work in a higher range of motion. So again, I'm rolling my biceps out, my triceps in, I'm pressing against the strap, and I'm working really hard to make all of this happen. While you're doing this, you want to carve the breath. So let's try it one more time just with the cues of the breath. So we're pressing out, we're rolling our biceps in, out, our triceps in. Now we're breathing in through that right nostril, carving the air to the base of the bottom of that lung, and then exhaling through the right nostril, and then inhaling through the left nostril, carving that air all the way to the base, all the way to the back of the chair. Yep. And then just release. Nice. And so that is a strengthening and a stretching exercise all at the same time. So you can see we've gone from a little easier to a little more intense, and so now we're going to keep building on that. Okay, so let's move into a more robust strengthening type exercise. And so I'm going to ask you, if you would, to place this rolled up towel between your elbow and your trunk. So we'll do that on both sides. And what that does is, again, all about alignment. It gets you in that more kind of neutral position, allows you to elevate your sternum. And then we're going to place this TheraBand, yellow TheraBand, around the wrist. And so now being mindful of grounding through the heels, grounding through the sits bones, elevating the sternum, and now we're going to open the sternum and the front chest while we strengthen the back side. So this can be done a couple different ways. We can go both hands out, and then a slow release. And you can kind of go out for a count of 1, and then a 3, 2, 1 on the inside as you come in. And again, elevated sternum, so you're breathing in and then blowing out as you come in. So always being mindful of the breath. As things get more rigorous, we tend to hold our breaths, so that's even more of a reason to pay attention. Now, if that's not available to you, like doing both hands, you can rest even one hand on your lap and then let the other hand come out. And what do you notice?